So, just like in the past, there's essentially a look that falls in line with some of this stuff. These people would have been like diametric to George Bush. These people look like the fuckhucker in Goodwill Hunting in the National Security Agency. These people look like the bald, kind of like me a little bit. And then these people, they essentially look like George Bush in a theoretical way. Businessy, political, shave face, that type of stuff. So then these people, essentially these people come in what is like fat and skinny. Where these people will be like blonde and really fit. They'll come in a couple blonde hair and brown hair, and they'll be skinny. These ones come in like fat versions. They're usually like in Ron Paul Revolution. They're like fat versions of this. And then the other ones are like shave face versions of light brown hair and blonde hair. And red hair also, I think. And so then these ones essentially have these looks. And so you might notice a few things. These ones are part of a S&M in the past, or might still be running on dark web, called Game of Bones or Game of Thrones. It was themed around that, and they're called the White Walkers, the people with the blue eyes. So that is where their training comes from, at S&M, and that their whole blackmailing world is to Jew Gimp, which means to essentially blackmail. It means blackmailing and then blackmailing. Same with these ones, blackmailing and then blackmailing. That's what to Jew Gimp thing means. And that when they do that, this Asian Islamic terrorism world is the one that collects all of that stuff on dark web. And so then these people essentially control what is cop gang, because essentially these people give these people the blackmailing database, and then they put them in charge over everybody through blackmailing and through sound speaker access. And now these people, this is Amazon Mormon Jew or Jack Mormon. And this is another version of that. And that what I want people to realize is what happens when you defy Satan. See, this type of stuff essentially was somewhat planned as like this gray shit that transfers over to different dark webs so that the government doesn't find it. And that currently the whole infrastructure of Skull and Mormon probably is centralized around Taiwan, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, any of the BitTorrent server world in that area. That will be the centralized holding area that pushes out to Mormon temples and then has a representative that controls over it from this world. And then that's when essentially this stuff, this is like where it's 50 and Mormon in the hookup site. And so when they link together, that nowadays, see, in the previous decade, it was essentially 50 in Mormon, basically, that they would act like they were at odds. The hookup site would essentially have two dating sites. One was considered Mormon, and the other one was considered 50, and that they would always be battling. And so now those hookup sites are essentially one hookup site, and that now they work together, right? And so that is where the whole idea is that the people that built this structure forgot that right in the middle of it all was somebody who was observing what they were doing. I wonder who that was. And so there's a connection here between these two. And it's called sex slaving and selling. See, one wanted to sex slave and sell to himself. The other wanted to sex slave and sell to somebody else. See, most of you may not realize that the structure that you people use. So just remember that if you're shades of gray or something, to be changing the color of your hair and shit. Just remember that you people, blonde, blue eyes, black hair, blue eyes. For whatever reason that you people get freaked out and start doing stuff, that doesn't really matter. I know who this person is, and I know who this person is. This one is involved in fuck clubbing Amazon Corporation. This one is involved in essentially fuck clubbing cop gang. Basically. And that's where they're essentially Islamic terrorists that are operating as a knock, attempting to be a non-official cover agent for our government, but are actually Islamic terrorists. And that this, if you people want to comprehend what clandestine is, this type of shit. That's what this shit is. Right? So, just remember that when you people are dumb, they'll essentially probably be the smartest people of dumb. They'll comprehend things a lot more than the dumb QN and Tea Party and shit of the previous decade. They'll understand things more than the George Bush 9/11 Rudy Giuliani world. They'll understand things more than AA team run pedo bang books. They'll understand things more than dumb Nazi fuck cucker world. They'll understand things more than sleazy KGB. But they won't understand things more than Satan. Because essentially, all of you made one or two huge fucking mistakes. Huge fucking mistakes that makes all of you definitely not part of our government's intelligence infrastructure. For sure. 100%. If you guys want to concise things down to one single indicator, just remember, cuckolders, that disqualifies all of you. And I know that more than anybody. So, my thoughts is that eventually this type of skull idea is essentially there's also people that are negative skull. They're known as moon men. The greatest people that America, and in ways the British, they have people that are considered bunker spooge men. Basically, the best genetics, the best people, the Neil Armstrongs and shit of our modern world. Basically, those people, my guess is that eventually it's going to turn into this side problem in intelligence. Essentially, it'll probably move towards Air Force guys at NASA that probably will get taken away from astronaut and will probably be put in some sort of leadership capacity in the Central Intelligence Agency, basically. And so just remember that that is where the ideas of Superman, none of these people are. See, the ideas of Superman may seem heterosexual, but it's about procreation. It's about procreating the best genetics of the smartest people that can do the grandest things in the world. That is what Superman is about. And that these people will pretty much hate. One of the psychological aspects to axes is that they will hate Supermen, the super spooge genetics of the allied world. They'll hate them because essentially they do satanic S&M in different variant ways, and that whole S&M infrastructure is about making people superior genetics, and that part of that is people who always procreate in the procreation way. People that have weird sex fetishes and butt fuck kids and dudes and shit. That's not that. People that are able to keep their penis in their pants and to fuck their own wife and to build smart children and shit that have a high propensity to being geniuses and also somewhat of a athletic body in ways. Those people, that's the Superman spoogens. And that these people essentially are in an Axis world that attempts to make somebody like that, and that they always fail. And that's why, deep down, doing Satanism makes you inferior. Touching kids makes you inferior. See, the people that refrain from that stuff, from doing any Satanism, from any type of satanic S&M idea, from any type of Masonic idea and shit, are the superior people. And that is essentially what will probably be the future. See, nobody learned anything from the past, and so we're repeating ourselves. And so now, what happens when nobody learns history? And this is what I have for the Masonic world, who's kept all of this stuff secret. Nobody learned from history. And look how it repeats itself, just like what they would say in their Mason Lodge. And you see that I have pinpointed. Everybody should comprehend this and what never to fucking do. This is everything never to fucking do. Dumb first, and then smart. Smart will pretty much have a whole data analysis of what never to fucking do. Basically, that this is how I know that all things fall into the wizard's methods. It took decades for everybody to essentially show the Allied world in ways what never to fucking do. And that essentially all this stuff is what the CIA was doing right after World War II. Basically, that this is basically what the Axis world, it's like they would go different places, they would determine the culture, and then they would get a box. They would get a Nazi inclusion box. They are exactly what never to do. And that what you might notice is here is the failure of the stock market. Basically, the roaring 20s is exactly the kind of backwards kind of shit that they do in Russia. And that then the 30s is essentially a militarized subcontracting world. And then in the 40s was essentially an expansion in a Nixon way into wanting to go into China. And then essentially in the 50s is when the exploratory oil world started happening. And then in the 50s is when they started MK Ultra Stupid. And then in the 60s is essentially when they started focusing on all the people that were counterculture in the hippie world. That's essentially what these people do. And attempting to discredit idealistic people that don't adhere to some neurotic normal world, basically. And then in the 70s, essentially was Nixon's rise of his push for Chinese economics. And then in the 80s was essentially Donald Rumsfeld's stupid fucking Afghanistan oil pipeline kind of shit in Iraq. Basically. And what came of all that? Oh, do we have the pipeline? Do we have Afghanistan? Are we able to compete in Chinese capitalism? Are we basically excluding the people that are idealistic and hippie in ways? The smartest people? Are we sitting around doing Nixonian, like FBI, J. Edgar Hoover kind of shit? Are we essentially trying to take over Islamic terror lands that have oil and shit? Are we attempting to do like placations and stuff to the Chinese economy to be buying our stuff? Are we taking money from them? Are we being their bitch? Are we essentially accepting a scientific world that has no ethics and shit? Are we essentially doing backwards forms of economics? How many fiat stimuluses are we doing? How many guns only? How many pushing through of shitty science contracts for Bradley fighter vehicles and shit are being pushed through by justifications of economics? Are any of those workers ever actually getting jobs in the United States? Are we getting Rolls-Royce contracts overseas? Are we looking to build power plants over in Russia and Eastern Bloc and stuff in our nuclear world? Who gets those jobs? Why is those contracts important? What kind of stimulus does that do economically? That's a backwards thought. You see that the idea of having people shoved in as literal slaves to our enemy that are doing things for our enemy is essentially what this is. And that this is the grand theoretics from this dumb fucking world of shoving dumb into the problem or something. And that you know what the problem is? This fucking world. And you see how the wizard has shoved dumb into your guys' dumb fucking brains. This all stems from you people covering up a massive MK Ultra victimization over decades. And that is what I've concised this down to. This stupid fuck is literally the stupidest fuck I've ever come across when it comes to being a fucking president. You see how they were doing stupid as fuck shit, and then they put a stupid skull fucking pedo banger as the head of it, and look at the stupid that came from that. This is where they do. Right when he took control, this was the types of shit that they look to envision so that they can sit back and know the next steps and the next ideas ahead of time so that they can extrapolate money out of this process. These fucking greedy Satanists. This is satanic money. Skull pedo bangland. They look to formulate a control over the future in advance by building an advanced plan that then they sit back. See, during this phase, they were all planning on how to extrapolate money out of this decade from controls from their little skull CIA land. Okay? That's what their like priority is. They don't care about good economics. All they care about is their little stupid little satanic money pedo banger world making all the money in the world. That's all they care about. That's all this stuff, his little fucking plans, that's all it was ever really made for. The MK Ultra era was satanic power. All those people cared about was extrapolating every single piece of power out of Eisenhower's economic buildup. So, now that you people that sit around with your guys' stupid, dwindling, washed up, stupid fucking world, just remember this right here. These people are so fucking retarded and so psychologically fucked up in their fucking brain that none of them would necessarily have any fucking influence over anything. But they'll be able to comprehend the QAnon shit, and they'll know how to extrapolate influence for themselves for the enemy. Anything, any advice that comes from them will essentially be a manipulation that is all about Islamic terror control in a very concise way. And so just remember that when you people did the stupidest fucking thing you guys could ever think of, okay, pine cones? The stupidest thing that ever made it into your fucking brains. Pine cone. Right? Dunce. Pedo muncher. And that essentially, that is where they're probably some sort of clan bastard. This one will probably be a bastard of some clan knight or clan hood or whatever. And same with this one. And that essentially whoever the mothers are will probably be so close in genetics to the clan member that essentially they would be probably a genetic cousin or almost a genetic sister. Okay? That is essentially where a lot of these people just may not realize the reason they have Mormon clans is because the clan used to go around spurging in all the pedophile, like the mothers wouldn't want their Mormon husband to be procreating with, because they would be pedophiles and essentially like a Brigham Young sister or brother, basically. And so the Klan used to go around in the 1980s. They used to go around spooging in weird Christian pedo Christ mothers. And then the Klan used to go around spooging in Mormon mothers in the 1980s. And then they made a bunch of bastards. And then the Allied world didn't.